My husband cheated on me with a college girl, and when their affair risked exposure, she turned the tables and accused him of assault. She came to me clutching evidence and demanded $2 million. In my previous life, I was foolish enough to give her the money, not only handing it over, but also leaving a banknote that said I had voluntarily gifted it in exchange for the so-called evidence, thinking it would protect my husband's reputation. I never realized it was nothing more than a carefully staged drama designed by the two of them to justify transferring assets out of our marriage. When fate gave me a second chance, I looked into that girl's tearful eyes, and instead of trembling the way I once did, I told her calmly and firmly, "Then sue him. I will help you find a lawyer." The words felt like steel on my tongue, and even I was startled by how steady my voice sounded. It all began again in the same way. Michael Bennett, my husband, told me he had to work late at Blackwood Corporation and would not be coming home. That was exactly how it had played out before. The following afternoon, my phone rang. The moment I lifted it to my ear, I heard the faint sound of a girl's nervous breathing. I knew immediately it was her. "Mrs. Hughes," she whispered softly, almost trembling. "I am downstairs at your company. I would like to see you for just a moment." I felt my lips curl into a cold smile. At last the performance had reached its next act. I walked down the steps deliberately, each one heavier than the last, until I stood face to face with a young woman whose delicate features and fragile posture would have fooled anyone who had not already lived this nightmare once. She introduced herself in a trembling voice. "My name is Vanessa Collins. I have been in love with Michael for 3 months. He told me he was divorced, that he was single. Last night he took me to a bar, poured me drinks, until I was dizzy. When I woke up, I was in a hotel bed. My clothes were torn, my body ached everywhere, and he forced himself on me again. Every sentence struck me like an echo from the past. This was the exact script I had heard before. The words, the pauses, even the quiver in her tone were identical. The first time around, I had heard only buzzing in my head, a fog that drowned every rational thought. After all, Michael and I had been married for years. He had always behaved like the model husband, devoted, kind, endlessly patient. He carried my purse without complaint. After our daughter Cece was born, he changed her diapers, woke in the middle of the night to feed her, and handed every paycheck into my hands. He was the picture of the perfect family man. Who could have imagined that a man like that would stray? And with nothing to his name. In my previous life, I believed wholeheartedly that he was the victim of some cunning trap. Vanessa's demand for $2 million felt like the outrageous roar of a lion, but she had evidence, medical records from St. Mary's Hospital documenting injuries, photographs of them together. My closest friend Samantha Green, who at the time I still trusted as my attorney, warned me that if this went to the police with such evidence, Michael would certainly be convicted. Michael knelt before me, striking his face with his own palm until his cheeks swelled red, sobbing that he had been tricked, begging for forgiveness. He clutched at my legs, pleading that I think of Cece, that I save him for the sake of our family. My heart, weak and soft, cracked at the sight. I sold the shares of the company I had inherited, even gave up the house we lived in just to gather enough money to pay. Vanessa had looked me in the eye then and said, "Mrs. Hughes, the transfer must come from your account, and you must write that it is a voluntary gift. Once I receive the money, I will give you all the evidence, and I promise you will never see me again." I obeyed. I wired the money. I signed the cursed note. I took the envelope she handed me with trembling hands. And with that single decision, I threw myself into an abyss I could never climb out of. Now living this moment again, I forced myself back into the present. I looked at Vanessa's face, that careful mask of innocence, and I let my voice fall like ice. "Forgive me for being blunt, but if you did not want this to happen, you should not have been drinking. 3 months of being the other woman, and now you pretend to be naive?" She sniffled pitifully, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Just like before, she exuded wounded fragility, thrusting papers into my hand. A copy of the medical exam and a photograph of herself and Michael entangled in bed. "Mrs. Hughes, I swear I did not consent." She whimpered. I wanted to laugh. What a performance. If I had not already lived through this, I would never have guessed that beneath her trembling voice and quivering lips was nothing but a schemer's script. Rehearsed line by line with my husband. When my silence stretched too long, she pushed further. I am not asking for much, just $2 million. My family is poor. My mother is ill, she needs treatment. If not for that, I would have gone to the police already. This is a crime, and you do not want your husband caught up in court, do you? I heard he is about to be promoted to vice president at Blackwood with an annual salary of nearly $1 million. A little money like this is nothing to him. Her eyes glistened with crocodile tears. I promise I will never bring this up again. $2 million is nothing. Just pay it and it all goes away. To her, perhaps it was nothing. To me, it was everything, the sum of my life's work, the security of my child's future, the weight of every sacrifice I had ever made. I felt my lips twist into a bitter smile. We are just an ordinary family, I said coldly. Where do you think I can possibly dig up $2 million? She lowered her gaze, wiping at her face. I heard Michael say you still have your original shares in the company. If you sell them, it would be more than enough. And there it was, the truth glimmered through her words like a blade through cloth. What they wanted was not justice, not silence, not dignity. They wanted my money, my security, my future. They wanted me stripped bare. I looked at her quietly, letting the silence throb between us, my fingers tightening around the papers she had placed in my hands. In my past life, this was the moment I faltered, the moment I believed. But this time, the fire inside me burned too hot to be extinguished by her trembling voice. Of course, what they were really after was my money. I gathered the documents Vanessa Collins had handed me, tapped them against my palm, as if weighing their worth, and looked at her with a detached calm that was nothing like the woman I had once been. This has come on too suddenly, I told her. Give me some time to think about it. That afternoon, I sat at my desk trying to work, but my mind would not settle. Memories came flooding back unbidden and relentless of the years I had shared with Michael Bennett. We had met during our postgraduate internships, fresh out of school, both eager to make our way in the world. He was tall, his manners polished, the kind of man who seemed harmless and bookish with his straight nose and his black-rimmed glasses that gave him a scholarly charm. I, on the other hand, was never considered beautiful, but I had been born into a family of teachers, 3 generations deep. My upbringing was steeped in culture and discipline, a certain quiet dignity. At the time, my long-term boyfriend had just left for a job overseas, and we parted ways with regret heavy in our chests. It was in that hollow space of loss that Michael stepped in, gentle with his attentions, steady in his kindness. I was too easily soothed, too ready to fall for the comfort he offered, and we became a couple almost overnight. A year later, he proposed, and I said yes. He took me home to meet his parents, and I remember the jolt of surprise when I first saw the crumbling yellow clay walls of their old house. How could such poverty still exist in a country that had been pushing urban growth for so many years? Yet his parents welcomed me with warmth. Their skin was darkened from the sun, their hands calloused from years of labor, but their smiles were genuine. They treated me with such generosity during my stay that my heart softened, and I told myself I could accept this marriage and everything it entailed. We celebrated our wedding, bought a modest home, and in time welcomed a daughter. Life became a routine of Bill's meals and the endless rhythm of ordinary existence. The cultural gap between our families caused more than a few clashes. His relatives often argued, and his parents could be sharp, but Michael was patient, always attentive, always quick to smooth things over. Without that, I doubt I could have endured those years. When our daughter Cece was born, I noticed the shadow on my in-laws' faces. They had been hoping for a boy, and the moment they learned she was a girl, their smiles dimmed. The law allowed us another child, and they urged us constantly to try again, to give them a grandson. But Michael and I were united in our decision: one child was enough. Life in Reno was already crushing in its demands. Raising a child was no easy task. It consumed time, energy, and money like a relentless fire. It was like worshiping a tiny god who demanded everything. I had no intention of becoming a stay-at-home mother, sacrificing my career to shoulder the burden alone. Michael, too, insisted he did not want that pressure. We agreed one child was all we needed. That fragile balance collapsed when Michael was promoted. 2 years ago, he rose to the rank of director at Blackwood Corporation, his income swelling overnight. Along with it came a change in his demeanor. Outwardly, he maintained the same affectionate mask, but beneath it, his words carried a sharper edge. He began dropping hints suggesting it was time for me to give him a son. He said I could quit my job that he would provide. He said it as though it were a gift, a blessing, as though he were offering me freedom. I had been raised with a traditional backbone, taught to forgive small flaws in a husband so long as he was loyal. But to give up my independence, my work, my very identity, all for the pursuit of a son, that I could not do, I told him so openly. He nodded, pretending to understand, promising to speak to his parents, assuring me it would never be mentioned again. I believed him. I thought the matter was closed. Life returned to its quiet routine, so deceptively calm that I never saw the storm gathering behind it. I never imagined he would betray me. And yet in my previous life, that was exactly what happened. He drew me into the elaborate play he had staged. After I paid off Vanessa and retrieved the videos and photographs that supposedly proved his innocence, he wept in my arms, swearing he would treat me well for the rest of our days. I wanted so badly to believe him. But the moment he became vice president, he filed for divorce. He claimed our marriage had broken down irreparably, that our love had soured. He denied ever receiving the $2 million I had transferred. Worse, he accused me of illegally transferring marital assets. The court sided with him. Cece was taken from me, the majority of our assets handed to him, and the $2 million was considered a voluntary gift, swept into the marital property he now controlled. I was left with nothing, bewildered and hollow. I tried to fight. I demanded answers, but when I confronted him, cornered him with my fury, I was careless. I slipped from the rooftop in my rage and despair. When I opened my eyes, I was back in time, a month before it all began. Perhaps heaven had taken pity on me. Perhaps even God could not bear to watch evil triumph so easily. I had been a fool, but now I had been given another chance. This time I would not be deceived. This time I would turn the game around. By the time I returned home that evening, Michael was already there. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment before he looked away. Cece's small presence in the living room kept me steady, my heart hammering in my chest while I forced myself to act as though nothing were wrong. I cooked dinner, washed the dishes, tidied the rooms, each movement deliberate, each smile rehearsed. He must not see through me, not yet. The house was ordinary in its quiet hum, but in my heart a storm was rising. While I was in the kitchen, I heard Cece's little voice drifting from the living room. "Daddy, what happened to your face? Did you fall and hurt yourself? Does it hurt? Let me blow on it and make it better." Her innocent words pierced me like a blade, a warm, complete picture of family. A little girl so sweet and pure, and yet Michael Bennett had betrayed me behind my back. Did his conscience never cry out? Did he feel no shame? After helping Cece finish her homework, giving her a bath, and tucking her into bed, I sank into the sofa with a heavy heart. It had barely been a few moments of silence before Michael dropped to his knees in front of me. He slapped his own face repeatedly, hard enough to leave his cheeks flaming red. Tears streamed down his face, his whole body trembling as he sobbed Emily. I was wrong, I was so wrong. Just like before, he launched into a story. Only this time, it was a variation of the one Vanessa Collins had told me. He claimed he had been tempted by evil, that he was meeting clients at a high-end bar, when he encountered a college girl who was working there as a hostess. He said he drank too much, lost control, and allowed himself to be goaded by the clients into taking her out of the bar. According to him, once in the hotel room, the door was kicked open. A group of men stormed in chaos, exploding like a bomb. He insisted he was dragged from the bed naked while the girl suddenly changed her demeanor, clinging to one of the men and crying that she had been forced, that she had never consented. He said he had been beaten nearly to death. The men demanded $2 million to keep quiet, otherwise they would take it to court. Michael admitted he had tried to buy time by paying $50,000 up front. His hands shook as he pulled up his bank account on his phone, showing me the transfers his balance reduced to nothing. The memo line read in nauseatingly cheerful words, "Voluntary gift." Snot and tears ran down his face as he begged Emily, "I know I was wrong, but I swear I was drunk. I lost control. They still have the videos, the pictures. If this comes out, my life is over. You can't let me be destroyed like this. You love me, don't you? Don't let them ruin me." I sat still on the sofa, my gaze cold, watching him perform. "That girl came to see me today," I said evenly. His entire body went stiff. You know, yes." I answered, never looking away. "But her story doesn't match yours. She said the two of you are in love." Michael shot upright, as if stung rage bursting from him. "What, that little tramp?" "She's nothing but a hooker. You think I would fall in love with someone like that?" In my past life, this was the part where I had been deceived, where his performance had convinced me. He had sworn on everything sacred, even dragging the names of his ancestors into his vows, until I had given in. I had cursed Vanessa, believed Michael's every word, and destroyed myself by raising the money to rescue him. But not this time. I narrowed my eyes, voice sharp as a knife. "You said it was half finished, which means it was already happening. So you weren't too drunk to control yourself. You were capable enough to tear her clothes, capable enough to keep going." He faltered, fumbling with words. "No, Emily, that doesn't matter. What matters is they have the clip, the pictures. That's what matters." His voice dwindled to a whisper, shrinking under my stare. A cold laugh escaped my lips. "So if they accuse you of rape, then you really did rape her?" "Because I don't see evidence of consent. But I do see the bruises all over your body." "Fine then, let's call the police. I'll press charges against them for assault." I picked up my phone and deliberately pressed numbers, pretending to dial. Michael lunged, snatching the phone from my hand with the speed of a desperate man. "No, don't call the police. Don't do it." He hid the phone behind his back, his eyes darting nervously. His fear written plain across his face. The truth spilled out in fragments. It wasn't just once, it was twice. She said she liked it rough, that she wanted it violent, so I tore her clothes, I hit her. "Emily, I was drunk. I didn't mean it. The alcohol made me crazy." My palm cracked against his face before I even realized I had moved. The sting burned my hand, but it was nothing compared to the rage pounding in my veins. He staggered, and I struck him again, harder, my second slap echoing through the room. Then I seized his hair, yanking him down, as tears blurred my vision. I kicked, clawed, bit, my fury consuming me. "You animal," I screamed, my voice breaking. "You disgusting piece of trash." He stumbled backward, shielding himself as I rained blows on him. He whimpered, "Emily, stop, please. I know I was wrong," and tried to flee across the room. I pursued him, landing another kick. Finally cornered and enraged, he shoved me with all his strength. I fell hard onto the floor, pain shooting up my hip, but the ache was nothing compared to the icy void in my chest. When I lifted my eyes, his face was swollen grotesquely like a pig's head after slaughter. A laugh bubbled from my throat, wild and bitter, releasing some of the storm inside me. "You ask me why I'm crazy, Michael. You're nearly 40 years old. You have aging parents. You have a little girl who adores you. You are on the cusp of a promotion at Blackwood, and yet you run around chasing cheap thrills. Do you have a brain at all?" My fingers stabbed toward him, trembling with rage. He could not answer. His lips moved soundlessly, his face flushed red with shame, his voice finally breaking into a hoarse, cornered growl. Michael looked at me with those desperate, bloodshot eyes and whispered, "Things have already gone too far. There's nothing we can do except pay. $2 million will make this go away." I let out a cold laugh, the sound sharp enough to cut through the silence. $2 million. Do you think it's as easy as 200,000? This is extortion, Michael. We need to go to the police. Let them investigate. Let the court decide. Whatever the verdict is, we'll deal with it. He clung to my legs, his tears dripping onto my skin. "Emily, no, we can't go to the cops. If this gets out, I'll go to prison. I tilted my head, a bitter smile twisting my lips. And what does that have to do with me? If someone goes to jail, it won't be me. It will be you, his voice cracked, trembling with desperation. Think about Cece. Even if you don't care about me, think about her. Think about what will happen to our daughter. The mention of Cece's name ignited something primal in me. My hand lashed out the crack of my slap, echoing in the living room. My whole body shook with fury. Don't you dare bring up Cece. You're not worthy to even say her name. In my past life after the divorce, he had taken custody of her. He had ripped her from my arms, only to pull her out of school and dump her with his parents in the countryside. The memory of her crying voice begging me not to leave her still burned in my chest. He stayed kneeling, clutching my legs, even as I spat venom at him. He no longer had any pride. For $2 million, he was willing to grovel like a dog. I laughed bitterly to myself, wondering how I could ever have believed this man was noble, loyal, or decent. Let go of me, I snapped, prying at his hands. Give me my phone. I need to call Samantha. I'll ask her what to do. At the mention of Samantha Green, my lifelong friend and trusted lawyer Michael froze. For a flicker of a second, hope gleamed in his eyes before he smothered it. Emily, he said softly. You believe me now, don't you? Then please don't tell her it was me. Don't let her know I'm the one involved. A bitter scoff escaped me. So you want me to take the fall for you? You want me to tell my own lawyer that my husband had nothing to do with this? I didn't give him the chance to answer. At 1 a.m, when the house was quiet and Cece slept soundly, I stepped out onto the balcony and dialed Samantha's number. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine from the Nevada hills. When she answered, her voice was thick with sleep, yet playfully familiar. Darling, it's so late. Do you miss me that much? I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, forcing my tone steady. Samantha, I need to ask you something. There was a pause, then her voice softened. What is it, sweetheart? You know about those honey trap cases I began, where a man is set up at a bar and then accused after the fact. A friend of mine is caught in one. I want to know if this went to court. Would he have a chance of winning? She was silent for a long time before answering, her voice low and heavy. Did it actually happen? Yes, I whispered. Twice. Another silence. I could almost hear her breathing on the other end. Finally, she said, Then I'll be honest. The chances aren't good. From what you've described, the evidence is clear. The woman will not change her statement. The likelihood of conviction for assault is very high. Her words mirrored exactly what she had said in my past life. A weary sigh left my lips. I understand. Who is it? She asked suddenly. My eyes lifted to the dark canopy of trees swaying outside the balcony. Who else could it be, Michael? What? Samantha's voice cracked into a near shout. Your husband? That's impossible. Tears welled in my eyes and spilled before I could stop them. My voice broke into a sob. You know him. You've seen him. He doesn't seem like that kind of man, does he? He told me he was drunk, that he was tricked. On the other end, I could feel her hesitation. Even through the phone, I sensed her unease. She had always been sharp, always had quick answers. But now she fumbled. Emily, what are you going to do? I hesitated. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for 2 lifetimes. If you were the lawyer on this case, could you win? Her response was sharp, almost panicked. Are you insane? The other side hasn't even filed charges yet. You're thinking about making Michael turn himself in. If he's convicted, what happens to Cece? What happens when people start whispering behind your back? Her words pressed on me, trying to push me down into the same corner I had once been shoved into. My chest felt heavy, but I steadied my breathing. It's $2 million, Samantha. It's extortion. I know it, and you know it. I can't stand the thought of just giving in. That's why he dared to push this far. She said, her tone softening, because he knows you, Emily. He knows you'll hesitate. You've been with him for years, your lives tied together, you have a child. You won't blow everything up. She gentled her voice, coaxing like a lullaby. Darling, isn't a peaceful family what you've always wanted? Michael isn't cruel to you. He told you himself he was drunk, he was set up. You've just been blindsided. You're still in shock. But if there's no real problem between you, then breathe. Think clearly. Don't rush. Sleep on it. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, I whispered back. Thank you. Then I hung up, staring at the phone in my hand. A cold laugh slipped past my lips. Michael had been careless tonight. In his panic, he had shoved his phone into my hands instead of his own. What he hadn't noticed was that I had recently changed mine to the same model as his. When I unlocked it, the first thing that flashed across the screen was a message notification. Baby, from Samantha. I froze, the blood in my veins turning to ice. How long had they been together? How many times had they looked me in the eye, smiling like friends while they whispered behind my back? In my past life, I had believed until my dying breath that the third party had been Vanessa Collins. But the truth, the cruelest truth, was that it had always been Samantha. No matter how carefully they had hidden it, Michael Bennett and Samantha Green had never gone public, and Samantha had always played the role of the loyal friend at my side, even when Michael treated me worse than a stranger. Never in my worst nightmares did I expect the truth to reveal itself so brutally once I had been given the second chance at life. That day, when it all clicked into place, my mind was a whirlwind. I had to pull my car to the side of the road just to breathe. At first, I thought the universe was mocking me. One of my coworkers had stuck a fake traffic ticket on my windshield, just a harmless prank. Laughing awkwardly, I opened the state traffic app to check if there were any real violations. To my surprise, 3 separate tickets showed up within the past year. That was strange because Michael always bragged about his driving skills. He'd ridicule me for the smallest mistakes, sneering if I so much as clipped a manhole cover or switched lanes a second too slowly. If I missed a turn, he'd smirk and say I was a perfect example of why women shouldn't drive. If I had been the one to rack up tickets, he would have called me nonstop to gloat. But these were his violations, not mine. I scrolled through the evidence photos attached to the tickets, my pulse quickening. One of them stopped me cold. The violation was for failure to wear seatbelts, both driver and passenger. Michael may have been careless, but he was never stupid. He always buckled his seatbelt, even looping it behind his back if he wanted to avoid the sensor's beep. And I, of course, always wore mine. Yet in this photo, both driver and passenger sat without buckles. And the passenger was clearly a woman. Her face was turned away, but I knew it wasn't me. My stomach twisted as I leaned closer to the screen. Both of them sat close together, shoulders brushing his hand, angled protectively as though he didn't want the camera to catch her. At first, I thought it might have been Vanessa Collins, but then I enlarged the image, zooming in on the woman's neck. There it was, faint but unmistakable, a red rose tattoo just below her ear. Samantha Green. When she was a teenager, she had been scalded by boiling water, leaving a rough scar along her neck. Years later, I had gone with her when she decided to cover it with a tattoo, that same rose she now carried like a hidden brand. I had stood beside her as the needle buzzed against her skin, holding her hand, promising her it would look beautiful. And now that same rose glared back at me from the grainy traffic photo. My mind went blank. My breath stalled in my throat. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't believe. Then the fury roared up inside me like fire. I flipped through the other evidence again. The date on the ticket caught my eye. It had been issued during the New Year holiday, when Michael had told me he was going home to visit his parents. I had been sick with a fever, and he had urged me to stay behind. He had left me and Cece for 3 days, sending only a single text, and one picture of a tree mocking in its tone. Look at this, Emily. A tree still green in the middle of winter. Isn't that strange? At the time I had smiled faintly, touched that he thought of me. Now I knew better. I dug through my memory, then checked Samantha's social media posts. There it was, an almost identical photo of the same tree taken from a different angle. Behind it stood the same farmhouse Michael had claimed was his parents' place. Only now I realized it was nothing but their hideaway, their little romantic retreat. My laughter cracked through the silence of my car, brittle and bitter. The green leaves on that tree, standing proudly in the cold of winter, were nothing compared to the green humiliation smeared across my forehead. All this time I had thought Vanessa was my rival, but the truth was uglier, crueler. My true enemy had always been Samantha, the friend I had trusted for decades, the woman who whispered advice in my ear while secretly sharing my husband's bed. She and Michael had crafted their little theater with precision. She played the strategist, the confidant, who would tell me to calm down, to forgive, while Vanessa played the decoy lover, the scapegoat to draw my rage. One took the bullets while the other slid the knife deeper into my back. Together they made me a fool. But not this time. Now I held the blade. The next morning, as I had expected, Michael crept away from home under the guise of work. I had already installed a hidden dash camera in his car, and it captured everything. He parked in a secluded area far from the city's noise, and Samantha slid into the passenger seat. Her voice was sharp, angry, nothing like the soothing tone she used with me. "What the hell happened last night, Michael? I almost called you baby." And it turned out to be her voice on the line. "Do you realize you nearly exposed us?" Michael scrambled to soothe her, his words dripping with honey. "Don't be mad, it was just a mistake. When we were setting up Emily, she tried to call the cops. We panicked, we grabbed the wrong phone. That's all," Samantha snapped. "Then how did she unlock it?" Michael hesitated, then muttered, "When I first bought the phone, she added her fingerprint." Her voice rose into a scolding hiss. "You idiot. Why didn't you delete it?" Under her sharp gaze, he wilted like a child. "I'll change the password. I'll remove her prints." "Do it," she ordered coldly. But none of that mattered anymore. I already had everything I needed. The dash cam recorded every word, every twitch of their guilty faces. It wasn't just the tickets anymore. I had bank records, secret chat logs from his backup account, even a voice recording of them plotting the entire scheme to trap me. The pieces of their deception were mine now. Every thread of their carefully spun web wound tightly in my hands. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Through the dash camera I had planted, I watched Samantha Green's hand curl possessively around Michael's wrist, her voice sharp with accusation. "You told me it was just an act with Vanessa, so why did you really touch her? Why did you make it real?" Michael bent his head in shame, his voice groveling. "It wasn't real, Samantha. I swear to you I only tricked her. It meant nothing. You're the only one I love." Her eyes narrowed, her tone ice. "You'd better be telling the truth. Because if you ever cross the line, if you dare pretend, and then let it turn real, I'll make sure you end up rotting in prison." He rushed to reassure her, his words dripping with flattery. "No one compares to you. You are everything to me. It's been 2 weeks and I'm going crazy missing you. I need you. Tell me you miss me too." There was a pause, then Samantha's suspicious voice returned. "Wait, did you turn off the dash camera?" "Yes," Michael said quickly. "It's been off for a long time." I smirked as the recording continued. They believed they were alone, safe. Their whispers turned into moans, and I hit mute disgust, tightening my throat. By the time their fumbling was finished, my contempt had reached a new peak. As they straightened their clothes, Samantha's voice cut through again. "And what about Vanessa Collins? Can she really be trusted? She's just an intern. Her family's poor, she needs money. This whole thing was just a performance. How can you be sure she won't flip on you?" Michael chuckled arrogantly. "Don't worry, I've got her in my grip. She won't dare." I leaned back in my chair, my lips curling into a cold smile. If she was truly under his control, why had she quietly gone to St. Mary's Hospital, securing a medical report, blood tests, and a pile of evidence that could damn him completely? That wasn't the behavior of a girl easily led. Very well, I thought. It was time I met Vanessa face to face. At the cafe, I didn't waste time. I sat across from her, my gaze steady, and asked directly, "For $2 million, you think these scraps of evidence are worth the price? Do you really believe this is all it takes to ruin me?" She faltered, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. I need to ask first." I sipped my coffee slowly, deliberately. calm watching as she stepped aside to make the call. Her eyes darted nervously, her voice hushed. A nod here, a whisper there. I knew exactly who was on the other end of the line. When she returned, she slid a USB drive across the table. This is just a pie. I still have the originals on my laptop in my email. The original medical report is locked at the hospital. I won't give you that. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen filled with images of Michael and Vanessa tangled in bed. Her torn clothes, his face twisted in a predatory snarl. To any outsider, it looked exactly like what she claimed an assault. Brutal, undeniable. By the time I got home, my fury boiled over. I hurled the USB onto the table and turned on Michael. My palm cracked against his face with such force that the other cheek, still swollen from the last beating, now found its match. Look at yourself, I screamed. Look at what kind of man you are. This is what you do behind my back. His eyes darted helplessly, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Emily, no, it's not what it looks like. She's framing me. I sank onto the sofa, my hair falling wild around my face, my chest heaving. Then tell me what we're supposed to do now. We don't have the money. He slunk closer, crouching beside me like a supplicant. How much do we have? I counted bitterly on my fingers. $280,000 in savings. My shares in the company after taxes may be $1.2 million. We're still $500,000 short. Where are we supposed to find the rest? His eyes darted away. We could sell the house. My laugh was harsh, edged with madness. Sell the house. And where would our daughter sleep, under a bridge? You're out of your mind. My shout sent him flinching back, his hands shielding his head, like a coward. He tried again, his voice oily. Then maybe we could borrow from your cousin Daniel. Tell him it's for a down payment on a new house. He's successful, isn't he? A few $100,000 is nothing to him. Shameless, utterly shameless. Still, I dialed Daniel in front of him. My cousin had always been protective of me, generous when I needed him. Without hesitation, he agreed to transfer the money, only adding a single condition. I want a promissory note. Interest 10% per year, term 1 year. I'll wire the funds as soon as you send it. I crossed my arms, glaring at Michael. He wants a signed note. Interest included. He hesitated, then nodded. Fine, I'll write it. Under my watchful eye, he sat down and carefully wrote out the debt. $500,000. He added his full name, ID number, and pressed his fingerprint beside the signature. Then I took the paper, added my own name and fingerprint on the witness line, and photographed it. Within minutes, Daniel wired the money. I wasn't finished. Write another statement, I ordered coldly. Acknowledging you've received the money. Michael's hands trembled as he wrote, but he did as told. I sealed both documents in an envelope and placed it in the drawer of my nightstand. I'll keep them safe, I said evenly. When Daniel comes to collect, I'll hand them over. Michael waved a hand, trying to act casual. Sure. Keep them wherever you want. What he didn't know was that I had already made a copy hidden beneath my pillow. He thought himself clever, thought he could tear up the papers when my guard was down. But I was no longer the same blind woman he had once deceived. This time, I would not just protect myself. I would make sure the knife in my back was turned against the ones who had plunged it there. That night, while I slept soundly, Michael crept from our bed. I heard the faint rip of paper, though I pretended to stir only slightly, letting him believe I was lost in dreams. By morning, he was gone, leaving nothing but a scattering of shredded scraps in the wastebasket. He thought he was clever. He thought he had erased the promissory note and the acknowledgement I had forced him to write. When I rose and stood at the window, I watched him drive away from our suburban Reno home, his shoulders tense as if the weight of guilt pressed them down. Only after his car disappeared from sight did I return to the bedroom. From under my pillow, I drew out the originals, the note and the signed statement, both untouched. He had forgotten his own habit, that foolish preference for writing numbers, only in Latin digits, never spelling them out in words. It made his little forgery easy to alter. With a steady hand, I added a single numeral, turning 500,000 into 2,500,000. I stared at the bold new figure, and let out a bitter laugh. 250. In my last life, it had been the sum total of my humiliation. In this one, it would be the mark of his downfall, my final benediction for a man who had betrayed every vow we had ever spoken. I stalled 2 more days, claiming I needed time to move funds, then arranged another meeting with Vanessa Collins. She arrived clutching a leather bag stuffed with documents, her lips pressed into a nervous line. I showed her my account balance on my phone, tapping the numbers casually. You want the money? Fine. But I don't move a single cent until you hand over every last piece of evidence. Reluctantly, she produced the bag. Inside were photographs, medical reports, even statements, but the original forensic exam from St. Mary's Hospital was missing. I feigned indifference, flipping through the stack. And where's the hospital's report, the original, not these copies? Her chin lifted defensively. You'll get that after you transfer the money. How do I know you won't double-cross me? How do I know you won't walk away? I chuckled darkly. And how do I know you won't keep another set hidden, ready to blackmail us again? You want $2 million, Vanessa. That's not pocket change. She snapped, her voice sharp. I've given you everything else. What more do you want from me? Do you think I enjoy this? I come from a decent family. I'm not some street girl. I was pushed into this. I cut her off with a dismissive wave. That word decent is so cheap these days. Everyone claims it when it suits them. Tell me, when there were other people in the room that night, can you guarantee none of them recorded anything? Can you promise they won't come crawling back threatening me again? For a moment, her mask slipped. She stammered, then forced steel into her voice. They won't dare. They don't have anything. Everything is here. I pressed my lips together, suppressing a smile. Of course they wouldn't dare. They were nothing but actors Michael and Samantha had hired pawns to legitimize their little scheme. Their purpose had been twofold: to funnel money from me and to keep Vanessa in line in case she grew bold. Sliding the documents into my own bag, I rose to leave. Good, then this is enough. The rest doesn't matter anymore. Her brows knit in confusion. What do you mean? I turned, my tone deceptively gentle. Vanessa, as a woman, I do feel sorry for the pain you claim to have suffered, even if the man who caused it was my husband. So I've done you a favor. I've already reported it, and I've even hired a lawyer for you. The door swung open then, and Samantha Green stepped inside. I smiled sweetly, waving her over. Samantha, over here. Vanessa froze, color draining from her face. I leaned closer, my voice soft as silk. I support you, Vanessa. Go ahead, sue Michael. Destroy him. But think carefully. Will you stand by your accusation of assault? Or will you admit the truth that it was all a scheme, a blackmail attempt worth $2 million? Choose wisely. $2 million is enough to put you behind bars for years. And in case you're wondering, I recorded everything we just said. I pointed toward the door. Look, the police are here. Panic flared in both their eyes. Their entire plan crumbled before them in an instant. They had expected me to cave, to scrape together every last penny, to hand it over meekly in order to preserve Michael's reputation. Instead, I had turned the trap on them. Michael, meanwhile, sat smug in his office at Blackwood Corporation, convinced I was at that very moment wiring the ransom that would save him. He imagined his promotion was safe, his marriage intact, his little charade unbroken. He would come home triumphant, divorce papers in hand, claiming irreconcilable differences, stripping me of both daughter and assets, just as he had before. But what awaited him instead was the heavy hand of law enforcement. The Reno PD stormed into his workplace, cuffed him before his stunned colleagues, and dragged him out. His resistance only worsened matters, thrashing, shouting, nearly earning himself an additional charge of resisting arrest. What grounds do you have for this? He bellowed. I didn't do anything. You can't prove a thing. The officers pinned him against the floor, their expressions disgusted, as though he were filth on their boots. By the time word spread, Michael's name was ruined. Whispers snaked through every corridor of Blackwood Corporation stories, multiplying with each retelling. Before any investigation even concluded, the company canceled his promotion, then found another excuse to terminate him entirely. Overnight, the man who had once paraded himself as a model husband and rising executive was nothing but a disgraced criminal in the eyes of Reno. His parents rushed from their small town to the city, their faces haggard with fear. But by then, I had already moved Cece, enrolling her in a new school near my parents' home. She was safe. Michael's mother confronted me, her fingers stabbing the air, her voice shrill with outrage. How could you? How could you call the police? My son is innocent. How could he ever assault some college girl? You're destroying him. I burst into sobs so loud and raw that even she faltered. Do you think I wanted this? Vanessa demanded $2 million. Where was I supposed to get that? You think I can conjure it out of thin air? I cried harder, shaking as though I were the one abandoned, betrayed, left without choices. For once I was not acting. The grief and rage were real, but I let them serve my purpose. Because if anyone deserved to wear the mask of victimhood, it was me. When I thought about who had the right to cry the loudest, to wail and curse about injustice, it wasn't Vanessa Collins, it wasn't Samantha Green, and it certainly wasn't Michael Bennett's mother. It was me. I was the one who had lost years of my life to betrayal. I was the one who had poured my heart, my youth, and my money into a marriage that turned out to be a calculated trap. If anyone deserved to weep, it was me. Yet when Michael's mother heard that Vanessa had demanded $2 million, she shrieked, collapsed into tears, and cursed me as though I were the villain, insisting Vanessa should be arrested for extortion. Vanessa was hauled in for questioning again and again. Her testimony shifted in small ways, contradictions seeping through the cracks, but she clung stubbornly to her claim of assault. And because the scheme had been orchestrated with the guidance of a lawyer, Samantha Green, the evidence, though crooked at its roots, looked convincing enough to bury Michael alive. Samantha hadn't expected me to confront her so directly. She thought I had invited her to meet with Vanessa, only to hand her the pile of evidence for safekeeping. She never imagined I would look her straight in the eye and ask with icy calm, "Do you want to be her lawyer? Do you want to represent her in court against Michael?" Her mouth opened in shock, her face pale. In my past life, I had been naive enough to place every piece of evidence into her hands, believing she was my friend. And she, together with Michael, had destroyed it all, leaving me with nothing. But this time, I had rehearsed my part better than either of them. She narrowed her eyes, suspicion flickering. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I shrugged, my voice even. "Because I believe my husband is innocent." Her confusion deepened. "Then why ask me to represent her against him?" I leaned forward, my gaze steady. "Because I trust you. I wouldn't feel safe with anyone else." She stared at me, unsettled, searching for the truth in my expression. "Emily, I don't understand you anymore. What are you really thinking?" A cold smile touched my lips. "I'm thinking that I want you to see with your own eyes how your perfect lover crumbles under pressure. I want you to watch the great romance you two believe in collapse under the weight of reality. My dearest friend, you'll see how betrayal tastes when the person you risked everything for sells you out to save himself." In the end, Samantha didn't dare take Vanessa's case. I suspected the reason was simple: Michael had leverage over her. Something that could destroy her as surely as I had been destroyed before. As long as she stayed behind the curtain whispering instructions, she could avoid direct exposure. That was fine. I didn't need her to step into the spotlight. I was ready to handle the show myself. 3 months later, the trial began. The prosecution laid out the evidence, the videos, the hospital records, the blood tests. Each piece hit like a hammer. The look on Michael's face as the noose tightened was one I would never forget. Rage, disbelief, and fear all tangled together. But if Michael looked vicious, Samantha looked worse. Watching her try to maneuver in the background, whispering strategies, only to realize the walls were closing in, was almost delicious. Michael was sentenced to 7 years in prison. His mother fainted in the courtroom, a shrill cry cutting off into silence as she crumpled to the floor. Michael's eyes turned blood red as he glared at Vanessa, his voice rising in a furious roar. "I'll appeal, I'll fight this, I didn't care." Appeal, scream, curse it, no longer mattered. His power was gone. His career was gone. His freedom was gone. While he stewed in jail, I paid a visit to one of Samantha's fiercest rivals at a major Reno law firm. Sliding the thick file across the table, I said calmly, "I want to file for divorce." The timing could not have been better. Michael was already a criminal defendant in a high-profile case. His name splashed across every paper. In the family court that gave me leverage beyond anything money could buy. At the same time, I prepared another suit, this one against Vanessa Collins, charging her with extortion. Before the hearings, I filed for visitation with Michael at the county jail. Sitting across from him through the glass, I studied his sunken face, the darkness etched into his eyes. Why he rasped, his voice broken. Why would you betray me like this? Don't you care what happens to Cece? I leaned back, my expression cold. Did you care about Cece when you schemed with another woman to rob me blind? Did you care about her when you dragged our family name through the mud? He slammed his fist against the glass, his lips curling. I didn't commit a crime, Vanessa lied. I tilted my head, feigning thoughtfulness. Really? Then the court must not agree with you. Desperation filled his voice. You have to believe me. Samantha has proof that Vanessa made it up. My eyes narrowed. Proof, and why would Samantha have that? He froze. For the first time, he realized his mistake. He didn't know that I had already uncovered his affair with Samantha. He didn't know that his every secret was now mine. He stammered, repeating himself like a broken record. She has it. She must. She has proof. I let silence stretch between us, savoring the fear creeping into his expression. Then I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. Maybe that's why she told me to report you to the police. Maybe that's why she pushed me to act. Because she knows you better than anyone, doesn't she? His face twisted, his jaw clenching, his teeth grinding in fury. For the first time, he realized that the fortress of lies he had built was collapsing brick by brick, with Samantha buried inside. I furrowed my brow, pretending as if some revelation had just dawned on me. So that's why she told me to call the police. Because she has proof you're innocent, I asked softly. Michael froze, his lips parting as if I had just spoken a language he couldn't understand. His face twisted, panic flashing across his eyes before anger burned through. He slammed his fists against the table and spat out venomously. That bitch! His features contorted with rage, his teeth grinding so loudly I could hear it through the glass. In that moment, I realized the grand love affair he thought would save him was already rotting from the inside. Their alliance wasn't built on loyalty, but on secrecy and fear, and like all rotten things, it would crumble. When I returned home, Samantha Green was waiting under the dim streetlight outside my building. Her figure, perfectly put together as always, seemed out of place against the cracked concrete and the hum of a flickering neon sign from the corner liquor store. She stepped forward the moment she saw me. "Where were you?" she demanded, her voice edged with impatience. I stood still, letting my silence speak louder than words. Memories flooded back, high school days, when we were inseparable, the years in college, when she studied law, while I buried myself in engineering, the nights we stayed up late talking about our futures. She had once laughed at my dreams of marriage and children, swearing she would never chain herself to domestic life. She teased me for being old-fashioned, for trading ambition for a family. And yet here she was, clinging to a married man, hiding behind the very lies she once mocked. Even in the second chance at life, compared to Samantha's polished brilliance, I was still just a housewife in worn jeans with a tired face. But the difference now was that I hadn't abandoned myself. She had abandoned us, our friendship, our bond, and every scrap of loyalty. I often tried to pinpoint the exact moment she and Michael crossed that line. Was it the night she got drunk at my house, and I was too busy tending to Cece, leaving Michael to drive her home? Or was it later when Michael's company needed legal counsel, and I, blind with trust, introduced them? I no longer cared. The answer didn't matter. What mattered was that this time, I was no longer the one stumbling in the dark. I had the power. "I went to see Michael," I said flatly. Her eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, scrutinizing me. "Emily, have you thought about Cece? What kind of future are you creating for her by dragging Michael into prison, by accusing Vanessa of extortion? What are you doing?" A weary sigh slipped from my lips. "Samantha, I am not just a wife. I am not just a mother. I am a woman. Michael committed a crime. That's not something I can close my eyes to. I let my words linger before lowering my voice. But he mentioned something. He said you're holding proof that he isn't guilty. The color drained from her face. She recoiled half a step, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Ridiculous. Why would I have anything like that? I'm not close to Michael. I tilted my head, my eyes drifting deliberately to her abdomen, then slowly back up to her face. If you had something, you would have given it to me long ago, wouldn't you? Her lips trembled, but she forced her chin higher. Of course I would. I gave her a slow nod as if in agreement. I thought so. And I want to believe Michael isn't guilty. I really do. That's why I've told people around Vanessa that maybe she should reconsider. Maybe she should admit to extortion instead. If she does, maybe Michael has a chance to appeal. Samantha's face went pale, her hands trembling slightly, though she tried to hide them by folding her arms. What are you saying I'm saying? I whispered, stepping closer, that I understand a mother's heart. And I don't want Cece's future forever tied to a father branded a criminal. Her breath hitched. My words struck their target. Everything was unfolding just as I had anticipated. The evidence Michael had hinted at was real. It was a written agreement, one he and Vanessa had drafted together when they first plotted the trap. The document was damning. It spelled out in plain language that every act between them was consensual, that their relationship was transactional, complete with a negotiated price. It was Samantha who held it locked away, believing it was her safeguard. Michael, desperate and arrogant, had believed the document would protect him if Vanessa ever turned on him. He thought the existence of a contract made him untouchable, but in truth, it was nothing more than a loaded gun pointed at both of them, waiting for the right hand to pull the trigger. And now that hand was mine. To make sure Vanessa wouldn't grab the money and run, Michael had slept with her and even arranged for others to secretly film the entire act. The girl's misery was undeniable, yet she couldn't speak the truth without destroying herself, so she clung tightly to the role they had scripted for her, demanding the money, as if her life depended on it. What neither of them expected was that I would refuse to play along, that, instead of covering for them, I would drag both into the harsh light of the law. If that written agreement ever surfaced in court, Vanessa would be finished. The charge of extortion would be undeniable, but the document vanished, disappearing as if swallowed by the earth. Samantha Green had once locked it away in her safe, her ultimate insurance. Now it was gone. Across the polished table in Harold Jennings' downtown Reno office, I sat with my attorney, who had once been Samantha's bitter rival. Harold leaned forward, eyes sharp, and asked me calmly, "Why are you so certain Samantha would hand that agreement to Vanessa's boyfriend?" I smiled faintly. "Because Samantha is a mother too. Vanessa had come from poverty so crushing she'd been willing to be a pawn in Michael's game. But she had one thing left to lose, and that was love. Her boyfriend, desperate to save her, had threatened Samantha with the life of her young son. Under that pressure, Samantha had surrendered the agreement that could have convicted Vanessa and exonerated Michael. I had never met that child, but when I came back to life, I hired a private investigator to dig up everything. He was only a year old. The son Michael had always dreamed of, the male heir. He believed he deserved the hidden reason. He'd been determined to orchestrate a divorce, to strip me of everything, to ensure I walked away with nothing, while he clung to an illusion of legacy. I looked Harold squarely in the eye and said softly, "The rest is in your hands now." Michael's 7-year sentence held firm. The trial had left no room for doubt, the evidence undeniable. Vanessa's case was more complicated. Though the proof of her blackmail was irrefutable, the court took pity on her, acknowledging she was both a victim and a pawn, that she had not truly gained from the scheme. With those mitigating circumstances, the judge handed down a more lenient sentence. And then, in an ironic twist, Vanessa turned around and sued both Michael and Samantha. The blow was devastating. Samantha, who once thought she could outsmart everyone, who thought she could balance love and ambition while hiding her crimes behind her law degree, found herself trapped. The legal community, long aware of her ruthless tactics, pounced. They dug through every shred of evidence, prepared their case without leaving a single crack. And when it was over, Samantha Green was stripped of her law license, expelled from her firm, and blacklisted across the entire legal world. She would serve her time, and even if she made it out, she would never again hold the power she once wielded. The woman who betrayed me, who once sneered at my life choices, was now just another inmate behind bars. The divorce was swift and merciless in my favor. Daniel Hughes, my cousin who had lent us money, was repaid first as the court required. Beyond that, everything else fell into my hands. What Michael had once stolen with his lies, I reclaimed. He left not only defeated, but owing me more than he could ever repay. Through it all, I didn't forget the child he fathered with another woman. DNA tests, school records, even careless traces of his presence in Samantha's neighborhood. All of it painted the picture clearly. He had flaunted the boy, openly registering him in early classes, hiring a nanny, living as though he could build another family while destroying ours. The court didn't label it bigamy, but it was enough to hand me full custody of Cece and grant me the family home. That was the victory I cherished most. My daughter, my Cece, would never again be at the mercy of his selfishness. She would grow up with me safe, far from the shadow of his corruption. Michael's parents, broken by shame, at least had the grandson they had long craved. Perhaps that brought them some twisted comfort, a way to soothe their pride, while their son sat behind bars. As for me, I felt nothing but release. When the divorce decree was finalized, I sold the house that had witnessed every betrayal, left my job, and packed up our lives. I boarded a plane with Cece, bound for the city where my parents lived. The moment I stepped out into the terminal, the Nevada sun blinding through the wide glass windows, I saw them. My mother and father, their hands waving, faces lit with relief and joy. And Cece, my sweet girl, tore across the floor, her little arms flung wide. "Mommy," she cried, crashing into me with all the force of her tiny body. I bent low, wrapping her close. Breathing in the scent of her hair, the warmth of her small frame pressed against my heart. Overhead, the sky was impossibly blue, clouds drifting like promises, the golden sunlight stretching across the floor like a blessing. This time, I knew I had truly begun again. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.